A week before its release, I made a video talking about how I was worried that Netflix's live action Avatar The Last Airbender would be bad. But was I right? Well, if you're a die-hard ATLAB fan, then I would say, yeah, I think I was. I know it'd be more productive to break down this series episode by episode and highlight what I like and didn't like, but I don't think this show will have the legs in the algorithm to let me do so and actually grow this channel. So, with the risk of being called an algorithm chaser, I'll go ahead and give some broad thoughts on the entire season. And if you don't know the story of ATLAB by now, then I guess spoiler, but I'm not even going to attempt to be spoiler free in this. First and foremost, as my title says, this show is a bastardization of the original ATLAB story and characters. It has a lot of the same character beats and moments, but it is done much worse than the original. And it can be seen immediately in the first episode. The season starts off 100 years before Aang was freed by the ice. It shows the story of the Fire Nation planning the attack on the Air Nation using the power of Sozin's Comet. Also, Aang has learned he's the Avatar, shows up running away, falling in the sea, all while the Fire Nation is attacking. You don't know the original show, this is not a bad opening. It sets up the Fire Nation being somewhat cunning, and Aang being unique and powerful as a young airbending master. Even his relationship with Gatsu is fairly accurate to the original. But the level of power the comet makes the firebenders, just not there. Even if you don't know the original show, nothing about the firebending being shown in the opening is more impressive or powerful compared to the rest of the firebending shown later. Even though they say we're only beating you due to the power of the comet. While it was cool to see the fire nomads fighting the Fire Nation, it was still done differently than the original ATLAB, and in my opinion, worse. The animated show, Gyatso, was very skilled based on all the Fire Nation found dead around him. In this new show, he kind of just hides a couple kids in the corner in an unlocked room, takes out like 3 soldiers, and then gets killed immediately by the Fire Lord in a not very exciting fight. This is the beginning of the show, and similar dips in quality and changes can be seen throughout the entire thing. Another example from the beginning of the first episode is Katara and Sokka just finding Aang in the ice. Yes, Sokka is now not sexist or whatever, and so they couldn't have him like piss off Katara, making her bend water that cuts the iceberg that grew around Aang's ice sphere thing. So instead, they get caught in the water current, and it just happens to take them to an already exposed ice sphere. Then, instead of Katara seeing Aang and breaking the ice open, she instead just like water bends near him, trying to get their canoe back, and that just kind of activates Aang. Like he's force sensitive to bending or something. That doesn't seem like that bad of a change, I hear none of the voices in my head asking. Well, it might not be till you think about it a little bit. Yes, the current taking them directly to Aang is the same convenient thing from the cartoon, but the fact that the sphere of ice is just sitting there out in the open is worse. The Fire Nation know that if the Avatar was in fact killed 100 years ago, then the next Avatar would be a waterbender. That's why the Southern Water Tribe has no benders except Katara. Were all killed when the tribe was invaded, and then probably checked up on at least a few times. The Fire Nation would have patrolled and searched a lot of the surrounding area. A big, perfectly spherical piece of ice with a little boy in the middle of it would probably stand out. It worked in the animated show because it was shown that the sphere accumulated more ice and became hidden as like a run-of-the-mill glacier. And it wasn't until Katara lost control of her bending and her anger that the sphere was exposed. It just makes more sense and fits with how he was hidden for so long. More than just, I don't know, there's like a little wall of ice in front of him with a single archway entrance thing or whatever. The second issue the changes made with Aang's discovery is that Katara didn't see Aang and didn't just want to free him. She just water bends and he wakes up and then breaks the ice himself. That is not how the Avatar state works. Katara is the one that sees him and has the compassion to let him out of the ice. It sets the motion for the entire series. Katara makes the choice and has the compassion to free Aang. But on this show, I guess Zuko could have just been like passing by on his ship, being trained by Iroh, and him, bending on the back of the deck could have just activated Aang. This is a stupid change to the story just because they couldn't think of a way to have Katara piss at Sokka without making him say like a sexist comment or whatever. There are changes like this all over the story. Some are big, some are small, and some are just brand new things added in all together. The first 2 episodes and probably the last 2 episodes are the closest to the original source material. And the middle 4 is like a combination of the entirety of the middle half of the first season and some of the second season put together into 2 separate 2-parter episodes. By this I mean like the first 2 episodes are loosely the first 4 episodes of season 1, and by loosely I mean because they do stuff like before they even get to Kyoshi, Katara already has the waterbending scroll. Turns out her grandma just had it and didn't tell anyone because Fire Nation, and just like slipped it in their bag before they left. That was just a taste of the kind of story changes and episodes mashing together they did, because after all this, they get to Omashu. In Omashu, they really start to just do some fuckery. What can be found in Omashu? Well, we have Jet. We have Inventor and Wheelchair Kid from like the Northern Air Temple in the cartoon. We got Badger Moles under the castle making, you guessed it, secret tunnel of love. But not love between Aang and Katara. No. Love tunnels for Sokka and Katara. That's right, sibling love is still love. Fuck you, audience. We also have Iroh arrested by Earthbenders and Zuko freeing him arc. But what is still the same is Boomy and the Cabbage Guy. Or are they? Well, the Cabbage Guy is essentially the same. He's just used as like nostalgia bait and like a good trivia moment because the actors, the voice actor from the cartoon, they just keep bumping into him and he keeps almost saying my cabbages, but then gets cut off. They just want to tease you before he finally gets his cabbages burned by Zuko and he does an overly dramatic cinematic my cabbages! Boomy starts out roughly the same. He's, a crazy old king. He makes lots of puns and talk about games. But Aang recognizes him right away. And then it becomes Boomy is mad and jaded that Aang wasn't around for 100 years and like lamenting the things he had to do as a king during the war. He still tests Aang about being able to make impossible choices to save the world, but he does it with anger and malice, only to then become a friend again when Aang apologizes and show that he still has the bison whistle that Boomy made him as a kid. I get the writers wanted to like show the side of people that would hate the Avatar for being gone so long and having the war started, but Boomy was not the character for it. There was something special about Aang still having a friend alive at this time, one that cared for him but, grew up and wanted to help him in his journey. Boomy was a part of Aang's past that he could still interact with and who he could go to and see that they didn't hate him for running away. They should have just had like a village of people that hate the Avatar for leaving as a contrast to all the ones that were getting hope to his return, not turn Boomy into whatever this was. Also, they show Aang and Boomy riding the like mail cart at the end like, oh, remember that? Except it wasn't set up at all in the show. Never saw young Aang and Boomy riding it. Aang never talked about riding it. Never even called Boomy a mad genius. They just do a memberberry clip at the end. So like new viewers of the show won't really get the payoff that the old had. It just wasn't well done. And this show is filled with nostalgia bait and memberberries that aren't earned at all. There's so much, hey, remember that? Oh, people still make memes about this moment, so let's reference it in the show. But anyone who watches this new show who doesn't know the original, it either won't make sense or just won't be as good of a moment. Speaking of the things that aren't as good as the original animated show, and to just vent about things I didn't like, Uncle Iroh is not a silly but wise and powerful man. He's just kind of a wise, occasionally mentioned tea man. and the actor did not do this well.
You want to come with me?
I've come fully prepared. All the tea I need.
Aang and Katara have no chemistry together. There are no seeds of love established whatsoever. Aang is terribly unfunny and too serious. Appa is barely in it. He isn't really a character, he's purely a means for transport. I guess he was too expensive or hard to CGI. Aang doesn't waterbend at all in this. He refuses to try, and even when he becomes the ocean spirit, he just like Godzilla smashes around and doesn't bend at all. Katara is a 100% self-taught waterbending master. They keep the screw the sexist master and the Northern Water Tribe thing. You know, she changes his mind and then goes, yeah, I don't need anyone to teach me.
You found a master, haven't you?
Yes. You're looking at her.
You know, she learned every single thing she needs from the scroll, and then practice as well as, you know, power of feelings. Yeah, they show her practicing and working hard, but they just make like giant leaps in progress from episode to episode. It isn't built up with experience, and she doesn't even have the drive of seeing Aang being more natural at it. She just kind of was able to do it really well after learning how to deal with the grief of her mother dying in a more healthy fashion or something. She's even the one that like saves the gang from a fleeing Zuko's boat in episode 1. Instead of Aang going Avatar state and allowing them to escape, showing Sokka how powerful he is and Katara what true waterbending could be, Katara just makes water appear in front of Zuko's fireball after we're shown that she's actually worse at waterbending than the animated Katara was at this point. Since I mentioned the lack of Avatar state, Aang hardly goes Avatar state in this entire season. He does it when he freezes himself, when he gets mad at the Southern Air Temple, and when he becomes the Ocean Spirit. And I guess this was Avatar state when they have the spirit of Kyoshi possess him to show him how powerful the Avatar state can be in like a girl boss moment. Speaking of Kyoshi, she is shown the most and talked about the most from all the other past avatars in this show. She's the one that does most of the bending in the opening. She's the first avatar Aang speaks with and the one he got the most like impression from. He's always mentioning what Kyoshi told him. Roku is only like faintly seen at the beginning and then seen once when Aang visits his shrine. In this new show, Aang can only communicate with the past avatars at their designated shrines. By the way, the driving force for Aang not going straight to the Northern Water Tribe in this show is because he wants to learn more about the Avatar, and he gets clues about where to go from a notebook about avatars written by Zuko. Yep, he learns about Kyoshi Island from notes Zuko collected during his 3-year search for the Avatar. Not because Aang wants to ride the big fish in his attempt to be a kid and have fun before becoming the Avatar, only to start to realize no matter where he goes, his Avatar duties will follow him. Nope. Zuko wrote an Avatar lived there, and she could do Avatar state. So Aang went, hey, maybe I should check that out. Speaking of Zuko, he was mostly the same. He had some minor changes, and again, just was not as good as the animated version, but he was majorly untouched. General Zhao, on the other hand, he was pretty different. He's a spineless loser and an idiot in this. I mean, he's sometimes cunning when they need him to be in order to move some of the story along, but then they do a major change to the story. They introduce Azula. Yep, Azula and the Fire Lord are in this season, and quite a lot. Azula is the actual brains behind General Zhao. She's the one that gets him support from the Fire Lord to give him a chance at getting the Avatar, and she pretty much gets him promoted. She gets him the crazy good archers and the chance to attack the Northern Water Tribe. She's doing all of this because the Fire Lord is playing her, making her angry, and work hard at becoming a warrior because he like praised Zuko for actually finding the Avatar. Azula is just at home training the entire time while working in the shadows with Zhao, and then trying to prove to Daddy that she's the best firebender ever. I mean, you get a glimpse of her blue fire, but mostly she's just bending regular fire. At the end of the season, she gets so mad at her father, she just shoots lightning, and this makes the Fire Lord go, oh yes, you're ready, and then sends her out to conquer Omashu in a very dumb looking helmet and armor. This kind of puts me into my next thing with this live action adaptation. The looks. The costumes do look good. The establishing shots look pretty good, and a decent amount of the sets and CGI look pretty good. But there's also a lot of bad CGI. And a lot of blurry cameras straight from the school of Zack Snyder cinematography. Bending sometimes look decent, but a lot of time just look super awkward. They would do like slow movements or like CGI enhanced people. The best was the earth bending. I mean, rocks are pretty easy to CGI compared to everything else. Firebending was the second best, but man, I hated all the weird delay, activate the fire in my hand thing they kept having them do. The waterbending felt off because, I mean, well, CGI water always just looks like CGI water. And the airbending was just a CGI fest of kinda see it, kinda don't. Now, they would use dust and leaves to show the wind moving, or just make it kind of visible. Anytime Aang had to fly or something like that, it just looked awful. Every actor looked super awkward doing their bending movements. None of it felt or looked natural. And they didn't even use the bending in clever and good ways like the animated thing. It was just throw firebolt, use wind to sweep the leg. The water didn't look like it actually hurt. It just like would splash you on your face. And it'd be like, oh god, you threw water at my face. And then the actor would just act like they're dead. It was just, it didn't look threatening at all. Not like it did in the animated show. While a lot of the casting did look good, I will say it was kind of weird seeing the characters more like kids. In the animated show, they were drawn in such a way that even though they were kids, you know, they still kind of looked and felt pretty grown up. At least at times. And they all go through a lot, and they can both act as a child or like a grown-up that's seen some shit. The more teenage look, almost adult character design worked well for it. A lot of these actors, you know, they're the same age or older than what the characters are supposed to be. Like the girl who plays Azula, according to IMDb, is like 22. But she looks 10. Everyone but Sokka looked just so young, and their acting makes you think they were inexperienced child actors. I mean, they do better with every episode, but man, the first few were rough. Again, the actor that played Sokka, you know, he seemed to really try. Even though they pretty much made him just like the comic relief and a much more shallow version of the character than from the original show. He did seem to care, and even try to talk like the original voice actor sometimes. That's one of the few things I can say as a positive about this show. A lot of the actors tried, and you know, I don't blame them for the story changes. One other positive that I genuinely liked was from one of the additions they added. Zuko's crew played a decent part in the show. They don't really like Zuko that much, but eventually Iroh tells them, you know, they should love him because the reason Zuko got his scar and banished was because he stood up for their unit, who were supposed to be sacrificed in attack when they were a squad of young new firebenders. But Zuko said, you know, that plan was stupid, and you shouldn't just needlessly sacrifice people, and that got him scarred and banished. Firelord just then also, you know, gave them that squad, banished them too, and made them his crew. I did like this addition. You know, the crew was conflicted about Zuko, only to just rally behind him when he needed him because they learned what he did for them. It was a nice moment, and one of the few things I generally enjoyed. While watching all these member berries and weird merging of characters and stories, I kept wondering, who is this made for? Because hardcore fans will see it as the inferior adaptation with no heart that it is. I think new people giving it a try will think it's just okay, forget about it, and not turn to the original cartoon. And if this doesn't get people to subscribe to Netflix, then it won't make them any money. It was dumped all at once in the classic Netflix binge model. There won't be as long of a discussion about it. They won't have water cool moments of people going, oh man, last night's episode was good. Rick, you should really check it out. So I honestly do not know who this show was made for, and why would they even do it? The smartest thing they've done with this IP is that the original creators are going to be doing an animated show about the grown-up versions of Team Avatar. But that will then run into this kind of split fandom of Legend of Korra fans, and then who knows. Avatar The Last Airbender was a fantastic show and has a lot of rewatchability, and where I think it should have stayed. The IP does not need to be expanded upon. Let it just be on streaming and be rewatched. move on to a fresh, new, original idea. Live action is just not as good as the original and just wasn't needed in the world. If I had to guess, I think the only thing that would be talked about in this show in a week would be memes making fun of it. Well, if you like this, please like and subscribe and help me grow the channel. And if you want me to do any more Avatar content, maybe break down every episode, let me know in the comments. Bye.